You were never supposed to be on that train, not really, but there are nights in New York when the air bends in strange ways, and time forgets to move in a straight line. Tonight is one of those nights. You step off the curb on 42nd Street, the lights of Times Square humming above you, blurred by the mist that arrived just after sunset. There's music from a saxophone somewhere, low and wandering. The city never sleeps, but sometimes it forgets to wake up. You're holding a ticket. You don't remember buying it. It's thick, almost like cardboard, with a strange grain, too. As if it were made from old wallpaper or pressed leaves. The ink shimmers faintly. Platform 61, it says in curling black letters, the kind they used on train tickets in the 1920s. You check the time. 1:46 a.m. The instructions on the back, if you can call them that, say only, enter Grand Central Station, lower concourse, door marked no access. You hesitate, of course you do, but only for a second. You've always been curious about things you shouldn't be. The walk to Grand Central is quiet. The city has thinned. Cabs drift by like ghosts, their lights off. A newspaper skitters across the sidewalk like something alive. When you reach the station, it's almost empty, except for a janitor mopping near the main staircase, and a woman in a long gray coat standing very still, watching the clock. You move past her, down the wide stairs, into the lower concourse. Your footsteps echo weirdly. The sounds don't come back quite right. They feel stretched, slow. There it is. A door. Metal, painted navy blue, with a small plaque that reads Nitrogen Monoxide ACCESS staff only. You glance around. No cameras. No signs of life. The door's not locked. You pull it open. Inside, a narrow corridor, just wide enough to walk single file. The walls are lined with white tiles, but some have fallen away, revealing older stone underneath, almost tunnel-like. The air smells like iron and lavender. You walk. The corridor turns, dips slightly, then rises again. There's a second door ahead, wooden, this time painted black. No handle. It swings open for you. You step into the space beneath the station. A platform, but not just any platform. This one is long, narrow, with golden sconces on the walls, their flames flickering without smoke. The air is warm, not humid, but old, like the inside of a leather-bound book. No signs. No advertisements. No maps. Just the number 61, painted in deep green on the stone wall. The tracks look unused, dusty, but not abandoned. You wait. Then you hear it. A whistle, low and drawn out, far away but moving closer. Not the usual metallic screech of subway. Brakes, This is a sound from another century. Something steams. Something CHUGS. The train arrives. It doesn't look like it should run. 5 cars long, all matte black with brass trim, windows rounded like those in old sleeper cars. The lights inside are dim, warm yellow. There's a symbol on the side of each car, a spiral, painted in red. The doors open. Nobody steps out. You look around. Still a lone dot, and yet not. You step inside. The interior is quiet. Padded seats, emerald velvet. Luggage racks overhead, though there's no luggage. A faint smell of bergamot and rain. You walk down the aisle. Each seat you pass seems to know you're there. The car is empty. Until the last seat. There sits a man. Gray suit, bowler hat, thin-rimmed glasses. He looks up at you, and his eyes are pale, almost colorless. You're early, he says. He gestures to the seat opposite him. You sit. He pulls a pocket watch from his coat, opens it, looks at the time, nods once. Good, he says. We have until 2:03. For what? You ask but the train begins to move. There's no lurch, no screech, just motion, smooth, silent. The lights outside the windows shift, not passing through the tunnels of Manhattan, but through something else, black, gold, then white. Then nothing. The man studies you. You brought the pendant, he says. Blink. I didn't bring anything. He raises an eyebrow. Check your pocket. You do. Your fingers brush against something round, metal, warm. You pull it out. A small spiral-shaped pendant on a chain. You have never seen it before. He smiles. Excellent. That will help? Help what? But he doesn't answer. He rises, smooth as silk, and walks toward the next car. You follow. Each car is different. The next is a lounge car, but the furniture is antique. Leather chairs, oil paintings, a piano that plays itself, soft, sad notes that don't quite form, a melody, then a dining car, plates set, food untouched, candles flickering and lanterns filled with red wax. Another car, filled with books. Every shelf packed, no titles on the spines. You reach for one. Open it, blank. But as you stare, faint words begin to appear. Your name, your birthday, a memory you'd forgotten about that trip to the lake. The man watches. The train reads you, he says. It records who you were and who you might become. Where are we going? He shrugs. Somewhere between where you left and where you belong. You move to the final car. It's empty, except for a mirror. Full length, framed in copper. You step in front of it. At first, it's just your reflection, slightly blurred. Then it shifts. You're standing in a room you don't recognize. A bed, a window with a green curtain, a city beyond it. Not this one. Not quite dot, then the mirror shows you sitting on this train. Then not sitting, standing, lost in a forest of stairs that go nowhere. Then older. Then gone. The mirror flickers, then darkness, you turn away. The man nods. We're close. The train slows. You hadn't realized how fast it was moving. It pulls into a station that looks like Grand Central, but isn't. Darker. Deeper. The walls are curved like a rib cage. The arches pulse slightly. The clock says 2:02. The man steps off. You hesitate. He looks back. You'll want to be quick. The door closes at 2:03. What's on the other side? He smiles. The right question is, who's on the other side? Then he's gone. You step off the train. The platform is silent, and the door ahead, marked Platform 61 in rusted gold letters, is starting to close. You run. You slip through just before it shuts, and the hallway beyond bends left, right, then up, then down, then sideways. You're no longer in New York, but something here remembers you, and it's been waiting a long, long time. The moment the door slams shut behind you, the world shifts. Not violently, not suddenly, but with the slow, deliberate pressure of something enormous, something alive, exhaling. You are in a hallway, but it doesn't feel like a hallway. It curves, not in the way buildings are supposed to curve, more like the inside of a creature. The floor is stone, but soft underfoot. The walls pulse almost imperceptibly with a heartbeat that isn't yours. You take a breath. The air tastes like rust and rosemary. You glance behind you. The door, the one that said, Platform 61 is gone. Not closed, not hidden, just gone. There's only the path ahead. You walk. There's a light, not coming from bulbs or lanterns, but from the walls themselves. A kind of bioluminescent shimmer that changes as you move. Every step you take feels both louder and softer than it should, like your presence is being noted, but not judged. The hallway branches. 3 tunnels, each identical at first glance. Above each opening is a symbol. 1. The spiral. Familiar now. The second, a circle within a square. The third, an eye. Closed. You do not choose. The floor tilts, ever so slightly, and your body leans forward, drawn down the spiral path before you can think to resist. This tunnel is narrower, warmer. You feel pressure on your shoulders, not weight, more like a blanket laid across you by invisible hands. Then a door. Wooden. Old. It opens before you touch it. Inside is a room. Like a waiting room, but not for trains. More. like a hospital lobby from 50 years ago. Cracked leather chairs, ashtrays on stands, a water cooler that hungs with no power, a vending machine filled with things you don't recognize, glass bottles with swirling colors, paper-wrapped sandwiches labeled with names instead of ingredients. Grief, joy, yesterday. A man sits in one of the chairs. You recognize him, not from life, from dreams. He wears a conductor's hat, but his face is your uncle's, or maybe your neighbor's, or your reflection if you hadn't made certain choices. He pats the chair beside him. You sit. Not everyone makes it past the platform, he says. His voice is like burlap soaked in tea. Where is this? You ask Dot. He nods toward the hallway behind him. The part of the city that doesn't end, that doesn't help. He smiles. It's not a kind smile. Not unkind either. Just ... inevitable. You'll find a map, he says, soon. He stands, leaves. The lights in the room flicker. Then dim ... you rise. There's another door ... beyond it. A staircase. Narrow, made of marble veined with gold. As you climb, you see graffiti on the walls, notes scratched in chalk, ink, blood. Turn back. She's not who she says she is. Ask for the blue door. Time loops here. Don't trust the clocks. You reach a landing dock. It opens into a chamber unlike anything you've seen. A cathedral, almost arched ceilings. Stained glass windows that show not saints, but trains, each one different. Some floating, some burning, some buried. In roots ... at the center of the room. A desk ... behind it. A woman, hair silver, skin the color of dusk. Her eyes are black but warm. She looks up as you approach. Ah, she says, you brought it. You don't know what she means ... She gestures. To your pocket, the pendant, still there, still warm. You place it on the desk ... She nods. Then you may read. Read what? But she's already stepping aside. Behind her, a curtain parts. A massive book stands on a pedestal, bound in something that looks like bark and leather. The pages flicker in the breeze, though there is no wind ... You step closer. The book is open to a page filled with text ... Your name is at the top ... The rest, your memories. Written not as they happened, but as they were felt. The first time you lied and meant it. The night you're almost drowned and no one noticed. The smell of your mother's kitchen just before the storm. You try to turn the page, the book resists. You press harder ... It flips forward. Violently ... Images flash across the pages. A version of you screaming underwater. Another, asleep on a train that burns quietly in a snowstorm. A third, walking backwards through a tunnel filled with mirrors. Then blank ... The rest of the pages are blank. You step back. The woman is watching you. You've come far, she says, but not far enough. I don't understand. Not yet. But you will. The book closes. She hands you the pendant. It's different now. Heavier, darker, the spiral etched deeper. There's more, she says. There's always more. She points to another door, smaller, wood. No handle dot, it swings open. You step through. A narrow hallway, lit by fireflies, paintings on the walls. Each one shifts as you pass. One moment it shows a train in a field of wheat. The next, the same. Field flooded. A child standing knee-deep in water, staring at something you cannot see dot at the end of the hallway. A man. His back is to you. He hums. The melody is familiar, but you can't place it. You step closer. He turns dot, it's you, but older dot worn. Weathered dot eyes tired, but kind. Hello, he says. What is this? This, he says, is a warning. From who? From me. You? Stare at yourself, dot. He offers a mirror. Small, round. You look into it. Your reflection flickers. You see yourself walking toward a station, then boarding a train dot, then disappearing, then nothing. I didn't want you to come here, he says. But you always do. Why? He doesn't answer. He fades. The hallway goes. Dark dot, you hold the mirror. Dot, it feels alive. Dot, the door. A head opens. Dot, the sound beyond. Not footsteps, but breathing. The station is breathing, not metaphorically. The walls expand, contract. Pipes groan. Like lungs dot, and at the far end, a gate dot brass. Ancient. Covered in spirals, you walk toward it dot, it opens with a sigh dot beyond. Tracks dot. No train dot, just a platform. On it, dozens of people dot standing still, eyes closed, each one holding a pendant, just like yours. Then a horn dot low dot far dot, the next train is coming. Not behind you dot, above dot you. Look up dot, the ceiling of the station peels open, like the lid of an eye. The train descends from the dark, black, covered in moss and ash dot, windows lit with a red glow dot. It doesn't touch the tracks. It floats. When it arrives, no doors open dot. Instead, the platform rises to meet it dot. You rise with the others, lifted, weightless. You step onto the train dot this time. It's full. People in antique clothing. Children with eyes too old. A woman holding a candle that drips ink. You sit. The train moves. Faster than the last dot this time. You don't ask where it's going, because something in you already knows dot, something deep, something old dot. And as the train slips into a tunnel without end, the station breathes one final time dot, and then goes silent. The hallway of the Dovetail Inn was unnaturally quiet that evening. like the walls themselves were holding their breath. When Emily reached the door labeled Room 8, the brass number plate seemed to glint coldly under the dim lamp hanging from the hallway ceiling. She hesitated for a moment before inserting the key. The lock clicked open, echoing too loudly. Inside, the room was simple. A bed with a thick quilted blanket sat beneath a wide window. A worn armchair rested near. A corner table with a porcelain lamp and a Bible tucked beneath it. There was no television, no radio, only silence and the creak of old wood settling into the night. But it wasn't the room's simplicity that unsettled her. It was the painting above the bed. It depicted a dense forest clearing at dusk, the trees tall and skeletal there, branches arching inwards like arms trying to cradle the last of the fading light. In the center of the clearing stood a girl in a long white dress. Her face was indistinct, blurred like smudged chalk on canvas. Around her the trees bent unnaturally, almost leaning in toward her like they were watching or whispering. Emily stood frozen for a long moment, staring at the painting. She felt a cold shiver pass up her back, despite the warmth in the room. Something about the image pressed against her chest, as though the girl in the painting was more than just a figure on canvas. She turned away. Later that night, unable to sleep, Emily lay in bed with her eyes fixed on the ceiling. The window rattled lightly in the wind, and outside she could hear the steady sound of branches scraping against the side of the building. The painting loomed in the dark like a second window, but one looking into a deeper world. She sat up. The lamp's warm glow revealed the painting again. For a moment, Emily felt sure the girl had moved. Not in a dramatic way, but a subtle shift in posture. Her arms were now slightly outstretched, palms open toward the viewer. Emily's breath caught. She rose slowly and walked to the painting, examining it up close. The brush strokes were delicate and professional. Nothing about the paint suggested movement. But the feeling that the image had changed would not leave her. Then she noticed something else. In the lower right corner of the painting, beneath the shadow of a twisted root, was a tiny signature. Not a name, but a symbol. A circle within. A square intersected by a crescent. She recognized it from one of the strange symbols in the underground tunnel mural. A coincidence or something more? Emily sat back on the bed, her thoughts racing. The next morning, over breakfast in the inn's dining room, she asked Eleanor, the elderly innkeeper, about the painting. "Oh, that one," Eleanor said, setting down a steaming cup of tea. "It's been in that room since the inn opened. Some say it was painted by the founder's niece, a troubled girl with strange dreams. She vanished one winter night in 1929. never found. Her name was Clara. Emily's hand trembled slightly as she lifted her tea. Do people ever say the painting changes? She asked. Eleanor looked up sharply, her expression guarded. I don't encourage guests to dwell on such notions, she said quietly. Old places hold old energies, that's all. But Emily wasn't satisfied. Later that day, she contacted her uncle again. His voice was even more anxious now. You're staying in room 8? He asked. Emily, that room was closed for years. They only reopened it recently. It's connected to events in the 1930s. Unexplained things. Emily leaned against the cold window pane. I saw the symbol again in the painting, she said. The same one from the tunnel. There was silence on the line. You need to leave Fern Creek, her uncle whispered. Tonight. She didn't. That evening, driven by a mix of fear and fascination, Emily took photos of the painting. But when she viewed them on her phone, the girl didn't appear. The forest clearing was there, yes, and the shadows, but the figure in white was missing entirely. Every photo was the same, as though she refused to be captured. That night, sleep came fitfully. Sometime past midnight, Emily awoke to the sound of whispering, soft and layered, like wind through tall grass. She sat up, thought the room was empty, but when she looked at the painting, her breath caught. The girl in white was gone. The clearing was empty. Emily rose shakily and crossed the room. She touched the painting's surface. It was cold to the touch, but dry. Then came the sound of footsteps, not in the hallway. Inside the room, she spun around. The room was empty, but the air felt full of presence. Emily backed toward the bed, heart racing. Then she heard it, a slow knock on the inside of the closet door. 3 knocks. She approached slowly, hand trembling. She opened it. Nothing. Only her suitcase, her coat. But when she turned back to the painting, the girl was there again. Only now, her face was clear, and it was Emily's. She stumbled backward, knocking the lamp to the floor. The room plunged into shadows. She scrambled for the switch, hands shaking. When the light returned, the painting was just as it had always been. A girl in white, face blurred, forest bending around her. Emily didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, she checked out, ignoring Eleanor's raised eyebrow. She didn't speak about what she'd seen. Not then, but that day, as she walked through the town square, she saw a young girl sketching in the shade of an elm tree. Emily paused. The girl was drawing the same forest clearing, and in the center, the same white-clad figure. Only this time, it was unmistakably Emily's face. The girl looked up and smiled. She's always watching, she said simply. Emily left Fern Creek that afternoon, but the painting never truly left her, because sometimes, late at night, when shadows stretched long across the walls of her apartment back in the city, she'd wake to find her phone screen flickering, a photo open, the one she didn't remember taking, of the forest clearing dot, and in the center, a girl in white, smiling. Elmsworth wasn't marked on most maps, not even the detailed ones. It sat tucked deep within a dense thicket of silver elms and moss-covered stones, the kind of place that existed halfway between memory and myth. To outsiders, it was just another sleepy hamlet north of the Catskills. To those who lived there, it was something far stranger. They said the ground in Elmsworth had memory. Roads would reroute overnight. Fences shifted inches at a time until they no longer marked the same property. But no one complained. No one even noticed it aloud. The changes were subtle, like the difference in a loved one's voice after. Years have passed. You didn't realize anything had changed until you felt like a stranger in your own home. Lena. Meriwether had lived in Elmsworth all 28 years of her life. Her family owned the general store, which had once been a chapel, and before that a post office. Its stone foundation dated back to 1792, but it stood firm despite the restless land beneath it. One quiet Thursday afternoon, Lena stood behind the counter, eyes half-lidded, listening to the sound of flies against the window panes and the gentle tick of a grandfather clock that had always struck 13. She wasn't sure why it did that, and she never asked. Questions had a weight in Elmsworth. Ask the wrong one, and the shadows listened. That day, a stranger came in. He wore a red scarf that didn't suit the season, and his shoes were caked with salt and dust. He didn't buy anything, didn't speak, just walked the length of the store, touched the old chapel bell that hung from the ceiling, then looked at Lena and said, "It's shifting again." Then he left. The door didn't jingle when it shut. The flies stopped buzzing, and Lena felt for just a moment as if she'd forgotten how to breathe. That night, she dreamt of the cellar. Her family's home sat just 2 blocks from the store, a weathered colonial with green shutters and a roof that always leaked in winter. The cellar door had been nailed shut since before she was born. Her father told her it was because the foundation wasn't safe. But in her dream, the nails pulled themselves out with a sound like cracking knuckles, and the door creaked open slowly. A voice whispered up the stairs, "We're still here." Lena woke in cold sweat. Outside, the wind rattled the silver elms. She went downstairs to check the locks, her fingers trembling. As she passed the cellar door, she stopped. One of the nails was on the floor. The next morning, she returned to the general store. The bell still didn't ring when the door opened. The clock was gone. In its place stood a mirror, oval, old, and dusty dot in the reflection. Lena saw herself, but behind her the shelves were different. Older, glass jars filled with roots and bones. The bell from the chapel hung crooked on a chain of teeth. She turned to look. The store behind her was normal dot. She turned back. The mirror was cracked. A hairline fracture ran through her reflection's face, and it smiled. Dot, by the weekend, everyone in Elmsworth seemed different. Not overtly, just slightly off. People greeted her using words she didn't recognize. She passed a neighbor walking a dog that didn't have eyes, and the mayor's daughter floated 6 inches above the sidewalk, humming a lullaby in reverse. Lena didn't question any of it. Instead, she walked to the library. It was built in 1910, but smelled older, like dust and damp parchment. The librarian, Mrs. Calloway, had been dead for 6 years. She still sat behind the desk, her eyes milky white, knitting an endless scarf of red thread. "I need to know what's beneath," Lena said. Mrs. Calloway smiled. Or maybe her face just cracked in a way that resembled a smile. "You already do," she replied. The book she handed Lena was bound in green leather, with no title. Inside were maps, hundreds of them, all of Elmsworth. But each map showed something different. Streets that didn't exist, rivers that flowed uphill, buildings made entirely of shadows. One map was labeled in blood-colored ink, the Elmsworth. Below, beneath the town, beneath its roots and history, was another town, a shadow of itself, inverted and alive. It mirrored Elmsworth's layout, but its buildings pulsed like organs. Roads twisted into knots. The people were stitched together from memory, and dirt. Lena felt something move under her skin. That night, the cellar door was wide open. She didn't wake up screaming. She woke up walking. Barefoot, she descended the stairs. Her breath fogged in the summer air. The walls of the cellar stretched farther than they should. Shelves lined with forgotten toys, teeth and mason jars, clocks that ticked backward. At the bottom stood the man in the red scarf. "You're waking up," he said. She tried to speak, but her voice came out in dust and feathers. He reached out and touched her forehead. Suddenly, Lena saw it all. Elmsworth was a bruise on the skin of this world, a wound trying to scar over. The people were echoes of those who had lived there before, and something beneath, something ancient, was feeding on their routine, their silence, their refusal to question. The cellar was a mouth, and it was hungry. The next morning, Lena boarded up the store and left town. As she drove down the winding road away from Elmsworth, her mirror showed a different reflection. Her face, yes, but older, wiser, and behind her the red-scarf man waved once, then faded like smoke. Years later, people still whisper about Elmsworth, about how it's not on any maps, about how sometimes travelers disappear between exits, about how you can drive for hours in the woods and end up right back where you started. And if you find yourself in a little town with silver, elms, and a chapel-turned store, whatever you do, don't go into the cellar. It remembers you. The morning light over Catskill Hollow had an unusual hue to it, not quite golden, not quite pale, like the sun didn't fully trust the sky. The mist hadn't lifted completely, and what little breeze there was carried a scent of cold moss and wet ash, like a fireplace that had burned out days ago but never stopped smoldering. Avery stepped outside the Hollow Inn and turned to face the building across the road, the Glass Hotel, a ghost of a place. It didn't advertise rooms. It didn't even have a proper entrance anymore, just a blackened wooden archway where a door once stood and a cracked brass sign dangling from a rusted chain. Yet people swore it was operational, or maybe just operable. And the strange thing was, no one Avery had spoken to could recall when it was last open. But it had lights on some nights. A piano sometimes played. Windows glowed faintly blue, as if a party had started in another decade and never quite ended. She crossed the road, gravel crunching beneath her shoes. The Glass Hotel stood taller than she expected. 4 stories, all glass-paned, though many windows were fogged or broken. She reached the threshold and looked inside. No front desk, no receptionist, just a long hallway of faded red carpet and mirrors on either side that stretched into a crooked reflection of itself. She stepped in. The air was colder, not unpleasant, but sharp, like high-altitude air or an old wine cellar. The moment she crossed into the lobby, the door, or what remained of it, creaked behind her, and the world outside seemed to hush. No bird song, no wind, no sound at all. Her footsteps echoed slightly, as if the walls themselves weren't used to company. Mirrors flanked both sides of the corridor. Old mirrors, oval ones with brass filigree, rectangle ones in cracked wooden frames, long dusty sheets of tarnished silver. And in each one, her reflection lagged just a heartbeat behind her actual movements. She stopped. The mirrors stopped. She turned. They turned, but always just a fraction too late. She touched one just to test. Cold, smooth, real. But the version of her in the glass tilted her head the wrong way, left instead of right. She jerked back. The reflection quickly corrected itself. Just a trick of the eyes, she told herself. Light and nerves. Nothing more. The hallway opened into a lounge, And this was where things grew stranger. It was well kept, as if someone had been dusting and cleaning and lighting candles, even though every surface should have been lost to time. The chandelier above glowed, a soft amber, casting shadows that swayed slightly, even though there was no breeze. Velvet chairs, intact and richly colored, ringed a low table with a tea service set for two. Steam curled from one cup, fresh, not imagined. She stepped closer. The teacup was made of porcelain so thin it was nearly translucent, gold-rimmed and filled with something that smelled faintly of lilac and rose water. Avery leaned in. The liquid shifted slightly, as though someone had just set the cup down. Across the table, the second chair was pulled out, turned just slightly askew, like someone had stood quickly or hadn't quite settled. "Hello?" she called. Her voice didn't echo. It was eaten instantly by the room, swallowed by silence. Then she noticed something that hadn't been there a moment ago. A photograph. It sat on the edge of the table, between the teacups. A black and white image in a cracked silver frame. She'd picked it up. It was of her. Not exactly, but a woman with her face. Her build. Standing in the snow beside the glass hotel, dressed in 1940s winter fashion, gloved and smiling. Not to the camera, but to someone just off frame. On the back, written in blue ink, were the words, "Welcome back." She dropped the photo, or tried. Her hand wouldn't let go. Her fingers remained locked stiff, like the muscles had frozen. The air thickened around her, no longer just cold but heavy, as if she were underwater. Then a voice, behind her, but soft near the base of her neck, whispered, "We've been waiting." Avery spun, yanking her arm free, and the photo clattered to the floor. No one stood there, only a mirror. This one, tall and slender, standing alone between two bookshelves. Her reflection blinked a beat late again, but this time it smiled when she didn't. She turned and ran out of the lounge, down the hallway, past the tea and the chandeliers and the mirrors that now seemed to pulse faintly with light. As she passed, one mirror showed her looking older, another younger, a third dressed in that 1940s winter outfit. Her heart pounded. She reached the archway, the entrance, and flung herself outside. The town was normal again. Birds chirped. The wind returned. The clouds shifted. She looked back. The glass hotel stood silent, still, the lights now off, windows dark, like it had never been alive at all. She backed away slowly, then turned and walked straight back to the Hollow Inn. No one else seemed to have noticed a thing. Over breakfast, she asked the innkeeper about the building across the street. The woman gave her a strange look. "There's No hotel across the street, she said. Just an old, burned-out lot. Been that way for years. Avery turned pale. It's standing, she said. I was inside. The innkeeper blinked, paused, then nodded slowly. You must have seen. Something else, she said. People sometimes get confused around here. Old stories, heavy dreams. Avery didn't push it. She returned to her room and found something on her bed that hadn't been there before. A porcelain teacup, gold-rimmed, still warm. Beneath it, a note. Night falls fast and hollow. Be careful. What doors you open. That night she didn't sleep. Not because she couldn't, but because the piano in the glass hotel started playing again. And outside her window, in the reflection of the glass, someone stood watching. By the third night in Catskill Hollow, Avery's dreams had stopped being her own. She knew this because when she closed her eyes, she saw places she had never visited and faces she had never met, but they felt familiar, like long forgotten. Memories stirred loose by something whispering beneath her skin. That morning, after the incident with the glass hotel, she made herself strong coffee and walked to the tiny library at the edge of town. It was more of a converted barn than a library, 2 floors, slanted roof, crooked windows, and shelves that bent under the weight of far more books than the place should have held. A hand-painted sign on the door read, The Hollow Collection. Knowledge lingers. It didn't say open or closed. She went inside. The air was dusty and warm. The scent of old pages, cedar, and something faintly mineral. A woman sat at the front desk, elderly, eyes too sharp, like they saw a few seconds ahead of time. Looking for anything in particular? The woman asked, not looking up from her knitting. Just browsing, Avery said. Feel free. The woman replied, but be careful what you take. Not everything likes being removed. Avery smiled politely, then stepped between the shelves. It was bigger than it looked, much bigger. She turned a corner and found another hallway of books, then another. The ceilings grew higher, the floors softer, carpeted in thick burgundy runners. Somewhere far off, she heard a grandfather clock. Tick. She ran her fingers along the spines, looking for something that might explain what she'd experienced in the glass hotel, or what was happening to her dreams. Then she saw it. A book she didn't recognize. No title, no author. Bound in faded green leather with a symbol on the front, a circle inside a triangle inside a square. She pulled it from the shelf. It was cold to the touch, even though the air was warm. She opened it. The first page was blank. So was the second, and the third. Then her name, Avery Lennox, scrawled in delicate black ink, as if the book had written it just as she opened the cover. She turned the page. A story unfolded. Not a story, her story. Word for word. Every step she'd taken since arriving in Catskill Hollow. The inn, the glass hotel, the tea, the photo, the teacup that appeared on her bed. Every event described in perfect detail, including things she hadn't told anyone. Then came something that hadn't happened yet. The next page read, she turned left instead of right, down the stairs, into the dark, into the archive, and that was where she saw it, the truth buried beneath the hollow, the thing that waited in sleep. She froze. The passage tugged at her. She glanced around. There, to her left, a narrow stairwell that hadn't been there before. No sign, no light, just a downward slope into thick shadow. Her heart beat faster. This was foolish. Books didn't write themselves. Staircases didn't appear out of nowhere, but she stepped toward it anyway. The first stair creaked. The second gave slightly under her weight. The third didn't creak at all, just a soft hush like settling snow. Below was colder, damp, the smell of mildew and something older, like stone that had been buried for centuries. The stairs ended at a small landing. A single lantern hung from a hook, its flame flickering weakly. In front of her, a door made of black wood, smooth as glass. No knob, no handle. Just that same symbol again, circle, triangle, square. She touched it. The door hissed softly and opened inward. Beyond it, rows of shelves, taller than any she'd seen above, each packed with thick books, scrolls, stone, tablets, all of them glowing faintly, not with light, but with memory. It was like standing in a dream that had taken shape. She stepped inside. The silence here was absolute. Every sound she made died an instant death. But there was a vibration in the floor, a deep, slow thrum, like a sleeping giant's breath. She walked slowly, eyes scanning titles that shifted as she passed. Some were written in English, others in languages she didn't recognize. Some moved. She turned a corner and stopped. There, on a pedestal, was another green book, just like the one upstairs, except this one had no symbol, just one word etched deep into the cover. Remember. Her fingers hovered over it, then touched. The moment she opened it, the room changed. The shelves vanished. The floor cracked. She was standing in a different place, not physically, but completely transported. A forest, midnight, snow falling in slow motion. A figure stood ahead, tall, robed in black, face hidden behind a mirror-like mask. The figure raised its hand. The book closed. She was back, still in the archive, still holding the book, but now her palm was marked. burned faintly with the same triangle circle square symbol. Her skin ached, not from pain, but from awareness. Something had been placed inside her, a knowing, a memory that wasn't hers, yet always had been. She turned to leave. The room resisted. Shelves realigned, paths disappeared. But she moved with purpose now, as if she could feel the rhythm of the place, as if something in her had been unlocked. At last she reached the stairwell again and ascended back to the main floor. The librarian looked up as she emerged. "Did you take anything?" she asked sharply. "No," Avery lied. The woman stared at her hand, at the mark, then gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "Be careful with what follows you back," she said. "Some stories don't like being left unfinished." Avery left the library and walked straight back to the inn. The sky had grown overcast. The clouds hung low, like waiting thoughts. That night she placed a green book beneath her pillow. Not the magical one, the normal one. But when she woke the next morning, it was gone. In its place, a page torn from an old volume, her name written in red, and the words, "The sleeper knows you now." The forest was quiet that night, too quiet. Not the usual stillness of nature sleeping, but a hush that pressed against the skin, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Olivia stood at the edge of the meadow behind the inn, her boots soaked from the evening dew, her eyes scanning the sky. And there, above the ridge line, she saw it. Not one, but two moons. One hung in its familiar place, bright and round, illuminating the landscape in a pale silver wash. But beside it, slightly lower and tinged with a faint bluish hue, was a second orb, dimmer, wavering ever so slightly, as though it were not entirely real. Olivia blinked, rubbed her eyes. It was still there. She called for Eleanor, who rushed outside, breath catching as she followed Olivia's gaze. "It's happening again," Eleanor whispered, voice nearly a prayer. "You've seen this before?" Olivia asked. "Twice. Only twice, and always in years, when someone new comes to Fern Creek with ties to the place." Olivia's heart skipped. "What does it mean?" Eleanor hesitated. "It means the boundary is thin tonight, between what is and what could be, between here and somewhere else." The second moon pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, and in its light the world seemed to shift ever so slightly. Colors were a little too vivid. Shadows moved when they shouldn't. Sounds echoed with strange timing. Later that night, Olivia sat on the porch of the inn, notebook in her lap, but writing nothing. Instead, she listened. There was a rhythm to the silence, as if something far away was breathing. A rustle came from the woods, and her fingers tightened around the pen. From the tree line, a figure emerged. A girl, young, maybe 12, in a pale blue dress that shimmered under the double moonlight. She wasn't quite solid, her edges soft like fog. Olivia didn't move. "Are you Olivia?" the girl asked, voice thin and distant. "I am. Who are you?" The girl didn't answer. She stepped forward, reaching into a small satchel at her side. From it she pulled a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age, and handed it over. "Don't lose this. When the second moon fades, so does the way back." And then, as if dissolving into the mist itself, the girl vanished. Olivia unfolded the paper. It was a map, hand-drawn, Fern Creek, but not the Fern Creek she knew. Roads curved in impossible ways. Buildings that didn't exist. A tower near the lake that spiraled endlessly upward. At the bottom corner, a note in swirling script. "Only under the twin moons will the door remain open." Her breath caught. Somewhere between awe and fear. She showed it to Eleanor the next morning, under the now normal single sun. Eleanor studied it for a long while. This is a map of the town before it was ever built. Or maybe never built at all. They decided to follow the map that evening. As the second moon returned, they packed supplies just in case and set off after sunset. The landscape responded to the moonlight, as if waking from a long dream. Trees shimmered. Stones glowed faintly beneath their feet. The air itself seemed to hum. They followed the map. Past a lake which looked deeper than before, almost bottomless, across a bridge that had never existed, but now did, into a part of the woods that Olivia had never been able to find until now. And then they saw it, a stone arch, moss-covered and ancient, standing free in a clearing. Beyond it, the air shimmered like heat rising from pavement. Olivia reached out, but Eleanor stopped her. "Whatever is on the other side, it might not be our world. I need to know what this place wants from me, why I was brought here." With a deep breath, Olivia stepped through the arch. Instantly, the air changed. Warmer, denser. The sky overhead was dark, lit only by the twin moons, and the stars were arranged in unfamiliar constellations. The trees were taller, twisted, and the sound of distant music drifted through the air, slow, mournful, and beautiful. She walked a winding path, following the rhythm of the melody, until she reached a clearing dot there. A gathering of figures stood in a wide circle. Some were dressed in clothes from another century. Others wore nothing but shadow. And in the center stood the girl from the night before. "You came," she said, smiling. "The town remembers you." "What is this place?" Olivia asked. "The in-between," the girl replied. "Where Fern Creek dreams." The figures raised their heads, and one by one they began to speak. voices layering over each other. She was the last to see it before the shift. Time folds here again and again. Only with 2 moons can the memory open. You are the key. You are the key. The words wrapped around her like a song. Olivia felt light, unanchored, like she could float up into the night sky. The girl stepped forward. If you stay too long, you forget where you came from, but you must choose. Some doors open only once. Olivia's eyes welled with tears. I don't know what I'm choosing. Then follow your heartbeat, the girl whispered. And with that, the world began to fade. Olivia turned and saw the arch behind her, flickering, unstable. She ran toward the shimmer, the forest stretching and tilting as if reluctant to let her go. The music rose into a cacophony of voices, her name over and over, calling her back. And then she burst through the arch, collapsing onto the ground of the real world, gasping. Eleanor rushed to her side. The second moon flickered above, then blinked out. Silence fell. Are you okay? Eleanor asked. Olivia clutched the map to her chest. I saw them, all of them, and they know me. Eleanor helped her sit up. They always did. As dawn broke over Fern Creek and the first light touched the trees, Olivia stared at the sky. Only 1 moon now, but something inside her had shifted forever. The days following the night of the twin moons passed like echoes, distant and layered, each one folding into the next, as if time itself had slowed. Olivia found herself often staring out the window, seeing both the present and something else behind it, a shadow world full of possibility and memory, hovering like mist just out of reach. She kept the map in a drawer by her bedside, touching it each morning, quietly checking, as if to confirm it hadn't vanished like a dream. It never did. In fact, the ink seemed darker now, more permanent, as though it too remembered what they had seen beneath the lake dot one morning. As the fog still clung to the hills like heavy breath, Eleanor placed a small, worn journal on the kitchen table. It was my mother's, she said softly, almost apologetically. Olivia turned the leather cover open and saw pages filled with careful script, dates, star positions, weather patterns, and dozens of hand-drawn symbols that made her stomach twist with recognition. Near the center of the book, between pages, stained with tea and age, Olivia found a brief entry written in tighter, faster handwriting. Tonight the bell will toll again. Just once. When it does, the sleepers may stir. Olivia looked up slowly. Bell? What bell? Eleanor didn't answer at first. She reached for the teapot, poured a slow stream into her mug, and stared out the window. The old brass bell, she said at last. It hung in the steeple of Fern Glen's first chapel. The church burned down over a century ago. The bell was thought lost, but it never really was. The words seemed to echo in the small kitchen, hollow and metallic. Olivia took the journal back to her room, turning page after page, reading entries from Eleanor's mother, who had clearly seen things Olivia hadn't imagined anyone else had noticed. There were sketches of tunnels, water levels, the twin moons, and something marked only as the threshold. Several entries hinted at a particular date when the bell would ring again, the same night that had just passed. And now it might ring again. That evening, unable to settle, Olivia walked to the library. She pulled open the heavy wooden doors, passed through the sleepy aisles, and found herself in the town archives, a basement room that smelled of paper, dust, and memory. She pored over clippings from the 1800s, hunting for any mention of the brass bell, the church, or disappearances. And finally she found something, a faded news sheet dated October 11th, 1882. Last night, in the hours before dawn, residents of Fern Glen were awakened by a single toll of the chapel bell. The church, long disused, had not been entered in decades. Yet several villagers claimed to hear the sound, as though it were coming from under the earth. No one has explained how it rang. Olivia sat back. Her skin prickled. She copied the article into her notebook, then glanced around the quiet basement. Half expecting to hear the sound herself, the next few days blurred together, charged with electricity. The town grew quieter, not out of peace, but expectation. Olivia found herself drawn to a walking path that curled around the woods behind the old foundation of the burned church. One afternoon, as clouds massed low and heavy in the sky, she ventured deeper along a forgotten trail that dipped beneath a curtain of ivy. It led her to a clearing where wildflowers grew in odd, perfect rings. At the center, half sunk in the soil, was a large stone slab, mossy and cracked, and beneath it, barely visible, a corner of something brass-dot. She knelt, brushed away leaves and dirt, and felt the cold metal with her fingertips. It was curved. She tapped it lightly. The sound that came back was unmistakable, a deep, hollow note that rang too long, too clear. Dot the bell. Dot, it had been buried here all this time, sleeping. That night, Olivia couldn't rest. She returned to the clearing just before midnight, flashlight in hand, heart drumming. She stood over the slab, waiting. The woods around her were dead quiet, no insects, no wind, just her breath and the weight of something ancient, listening. And then, at exactly 12:03 a.m., the earth trembled. Dot, just slightly. Just enough. Dot. Then came the toll, a low, resonant note that filled the clearing, the trees, the sky, the marrow of her bones. Olivia gasped and fell to her knees, the sound shaking something loose inside her mind. It wasn't just a bell. It was a call, not to the town, not to the people, but to something deeper as the echo faded. She thought she heard other things within it. Whispers, footfalls, water dripping in unseen chambers. The bell was not a warning, it was a key. The next morning, the town was different. Everyone felt it. The air was wrong. Dogs refused to walk past the old chapel grounds. Birds avoided the trees nearby. Olivia spoke to Eleanor, who admitted she had also heard the toll. "It hasn't happened in my lifetime," she whispered. "But my mother said it always means something has awakened, something older than us." Together they returned to the clearing in daylight. The brass was warm now, almost pulsing. Eleanor frowned, knelt beside the slab, and whispered a phrase Olivia didn't understand. The air seemed to pull tight. Then, with a sudden, grinding groan, the stone slab slid half an inch to the side. Beneath it, a staircase descending into the dark. They looked at each other. Neither moved. "You don't have to go," Eleanor said. "This path, it doesn't always come back." But Olivia knew she would. She had. The bell had called her, and now it had opened a door. She descended the steps alone, flashlight in one hand, Eleanor's journal in the other. The air changed as she moved downward. It grew thicker, older, full of the scent of damp stone and something like burned wood. The staircase spiraled deeper than she expected, ending in a vast chamber carved directly into the rock. And in the center stood a platform of stone etched with dozens of the symbols from the journal. And there, hanging in the air above it, was the bell, not buried. Floating. It turned slowly, suspended by nothing, humming with a silent frequency. Olivia could feel in her chest. She stepped forward, and the ground beneath her shimmered. The walls lit with glyphs that pulsed faintly, then faded. The bell tolled again, just once, but softer this time. It didn't sound like metal now, it sounded like a voice, it spoke in no language she knew. But the meaning was clear, closer. She obeyed as she reached the platform. Her flashlight flickered and died, but she could still see. Not with her eyes, but with something else, a vision behind her vision. The chamber was full of figures, tall, thin, with eyes like lanterns. They did not move, but they watched and waited. The bell tolled a third time, and she remembered everything. The lake beneath the lake, the twin moons, the name written on the inside of her own bones, gatekeeper. That was what she had been called, and now the gate was open. She awoke on the floor of the chapel rooms at dawn with Eleanor beside her, holding her hand. The slab was closed again. The air was quiet, but Olivia was not the same. and neither was Fern Glen. The morning after the third toll of the bell dawned unusually silent, as if the town itself were waiting, holding its breath. Olivia sat up slowly, her palms against the cool earth of the chapel's ruins, her body aching in a way she couldn't explain. Eleanor sat beside her, silent, her eyes distant, as though watching something far beyond the present moment. Olivia blinked against the light, the memory of the floating bell still vivid in her mind, the feeling of those watching figures still present, not as a nightmare, but as a fact carved behind her eyes. She wasn't certain how she had returned to the surface. There had been no footsteps retracing the stairway, no hands to guide her back. One moment she had stood beneath the bell, and the next she had awakened on moss-covered stone. But she felt different now, not just emotionally, but physically. Her fingers tingled. Her breath moved slower, deeper, as though her lungs had remembered something older than air. Eleanor finally broke the silence. "Let me see your hands." Olivia hesitated, then opened her palms toward the woman. There, etched faintly into the skin, beneath her left thumb, was a mark, a perfect circle, divided in half by a single vertical line. The gatekeeper's mark. Eleanor inhaled sharply. "It's real." She stood, stepping back, her voice hushed. "It's always been legend that the one called to the bell would be marked, but it hasn't happened since before the town was named." Olivia traced the symbol with her opposite finger. It didn't hurt. In fact, it felt like it had always been there, waiting to be revealed. "What does it mean?" she asked. "That the gate is open," Eleanor replied, "and that it cannot be closed the same way twice." Olivia didn't fully understand, but she knew this. She had been chosen, not by Eleanor, not by Fern Glen, but by something deeper, older, and now it watched her through every tree, every stone, every shadow. That day she walked the town differently. The streets looked the same, but the people seemed wary. Some avoided her eyes. Others stared too long. One elderly man, sitting on a bench outside the barber's shop, nodded slowly as she passed. "The bell's voice is in you now," he said softly. "Best keep it quiet." Word had spread, as it always did in small towns, and though no one spoke aloud of floating bells or buried chambers, everyone felt the shift. Children were kept indoors after dark. Church services doubled. Dogs howled at dusk. That night, as the wind picked up and rain began to fall, Olivia returned to the library, not for books, but for the basement. She descended the old steps, flashlight in hand, and opened the door to the archives. They welcomed her like a crypt. In the far corner, tucked behind maps and forgotten genealogies, She found something she had overlooked before, a collection of town diaries bound in deep green leather, marked only by year. She pulled one from 1910, then another from 1897. Their pages were mundane at first, crop reports, weddings, illnesses, but scattered throughout were strange notations. Night of the bell, 3 tolls, clouds like mirrors. Air tasted like salt. Marked child born under eclipsed moon. Mother disappeared 2 days later. Tunnel and orchard opened. Screams heard. No investigation. It wasn't a story. It was a pattern. Every 40 or so years the bell rang. Every time someone was marked Dot and something entered the world. Olivia returned home, soaked in questions. She dried her clothes, made tea, and sat by the window, watching the storm press against the glass. The town was asleep, but beneath it she felt movement. Not physical, but dot energetic, like the shifting of tectonic plates inside her mind. She lay in bed that night, unable to close her eyes, the mark on her hand pulsing faintly, almost imperceptibly, with each beat of her heart. Just after midnight she felt it, a whisper, not outside but inside her own skull. The gate is not a place. It is a person. She bolted upright. The room was empty. The wind had stopped. But she knew the voice. It was the bell. In the morning she returned to Eleanor's house with her notebook in hand. The gate isn't physical, she said as Eleanor poured coffee. It single quotes S. Me. Eleanor didn't seem surprised. That's always been the final truth, she said. The gatekeeper doesn't open the way. They are the way. Olivia ran a hand through her hair. So what now? Eleanor looked her in the eyes, her gaze steady. Now the old ones will test you. The words sounded like prophecy, but Olivia didn't have time to respond. The windows darkened. Though it was only 10 a.m., the sky outside shifted from gray to violet. Shadows gathered at the edge of every doorway, and far off just once the bell rang again. Not a real bell, not a metal tone. It rang in her bones. The test had begun. Over the following days, Olivia began to lose track of time. Hours stretched, minutes folded, sleep came in shivers. She walked the town, unsure if she was awake or dreaming. She passed people who didn't look quite right, eyes too black, mouths smiling without teeth. A woman with no shadow handed her a newspaper with tomorrow's date. A boy on a swing whispered her name in reverse. Olivia kept walking. She began seeing symbols everywhere, in the patterns of leaves and puddles on the sidewalk and the cracks of the ceiling. They all matched the mark on her hand. She was being followed, not by footsteps, but by attention, the kind that bends the world slightly around it. One night Eleanor took her to the lake. "They want you to return," she said, "to where it began." The two of them stood by the water's edge, the surface as still as a pane of glass. "You won't need a boat," Eleanor said, and before Olivia could respond, the water parted. A perfect circle, 10 feet across, opened in the lake like a mouth. Stone steps led downward, dry and lit by blue bioluminescence. Olivia stepped in, barefoot, feeling the water's edge lap at her ankles. She descended alone. The steps spiraled, just like in the bell chamber. At the bottom she found a hallway carved of smooth obsidian. Symbols lit the walls as she passed. The mark on her hand grew warm. Ahead a doorway stood open, and beyond it, the gate dot. It wasn't a door. It was a mirror, but it did not show. Her face dot, it showed her memories, all of them, playing like a silent film, flickering with light and shadow. Childhood laughter, her mother brushing her hair, her father's funeral, a broken friendship, a first kiss, tears in the rain, dreams she'd forgotten, each moment spun out like thread. She reached for the glass, and it rippled like water. Then the voice returned. "Do you still wish to be the way?" Olivia closed her eyes. "I never wished it, but I won't turn back." The mirror cracked, dot not shattered, split like a smile. From it stepped a figure, not a monster, not an angel dot herself, dot but older dot, not in years, but in experience. Her own eyes, full of weight and memory. The doppelganger reached out and touched her shoulder. "Then we are one," she said. Olivia felt herself pulled forward. The mirror dissolved. She was alone again, but she knew something had changed. She had passed the gate's test. She climbed the stairs. The lake closed behind her. She emerged into night, but the stars were different now. She looked at Eleanor, who waited with lantern in hand. "It's done," Olivia said. Eleanor nodded. "Not done," she said. "Shifted." The town would sleep for now, but the gate was open, and Olivia was its keeper. The sky above Fern Glen had changed. It wasn't a matter of weather or season. It was something deeper, woven into the fabric of air and time. Stars no longer blinked in familiar patterns. The moon seemed paler, more distant, and every evening, just after sunset, a hush would fall across the town. It wasn't silence, it was listening. Olivia could feel it in her chest, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. Since returning from the lake, since stepping through the mirror that showed, not her reflection, but her truth, the world had tilted. She moved through her days with a quiet steadiness, no longer resisting the flow of the strange, but accepting it, like a stream finally knowing the shape of its bed. Eleanor, too, had changed. She no longer guided. She watched. She spoke little, as though afraid that her voice might echo in places not meant to hear it. One morning, Olivia awoke to find a single black feather on her pillow. It shimmered faintly, iridescent in the sun. She didn't question how it had arrived. She simply slid it into her notebook and rose, knowing the day would not be ordinary. She walked through town, past shuttered shops and silent houses. Everyone was inside. Curtains were drawn. Lamps burned in the windows, though the sun was high. At the town square, she found a circle of stones, ones that hadn't been there yesterday. 12 of them, arranged like numbers on a clock, and in the center a 13th, flat and smooth, just large enough for someone to stand on. Olivia stepped onto it. The stones pulsed, not with light, but with memory. She saw images behind her eyes, lives not her own. A child laughing beneath apple blossoms. A woman standing on a cliff, arms raised. A man weeping over a locked door. So many stories, so many echoes, all of them marked, all of them in their time. The gate, then came the voice, it wasn't words, it was understanding. A pressure behind her ribs, it is time. That night the town gathered. No invitations had been sent, no announcements posted. And yet, as twilight bled into night, every door opened, every soul emerged. Men in coats, women with lanterns, children holding hands. They converged on the town square in silence, like leaves drawn toward fire. Olivia stood in the center of the stone circle, the mark on her hand now glowing softly, its warmth steady and sure. Eleanor approached from the crowd. "It's the tolling," she said, her voice hushed. "The final one. The last time the bell will speak in this age." Olivia nodded, heart slow, breath steady. She understood what was required, not just standing, not just listening, but choosing. The bell would toll, and she would decide as midnight arrived. The sky blinked. Not the stars, the sky itself, as if something vast had just opened its eye. And then, without sound, the bell appeared above the square, hovering, rotating, its surface alive with shifting symbols. No ropes, no hands, just purpose. The crowd watched, unmoving, and then it tolled. Once the ground quivered, but no one stumbled. Twice the stones at Olivia's feet warmed. Thrice the sky bent. A wind circled the square. 4. The air thickened like syrup. 5. Shadows lengthened, reaching across. Cobblestone. 6. Every lantern flickered, but did not go out. 7. Olivia's mark burned. 8. The bell spun faster. 9. Olivia closed her eyes, 10. And then silence. Long, bottomless silence. When Olivia opened her eyes, the bell was gone. The crowd remained, but they were not looking at her. They were looking past her, at the space behind. She turned, and there where the 13th stone had stood was a doorway, not physical, not stone or wood, a doorway of absence, a perfect oval of darkness rimmed with soft light, humming gently. It beckoned. Olivia stepped forward. She felt no fear, only gravity, not of mass but of meaning. As she crossed the threshold, the crowd did not follow. They simply bowed their heads. Inside the doorway, the world unfolded dot. She stood in a vast field beneath 3 moons. Grass whispered in colors she had no names for. A river of mist carved its way through a sky that turned inside out. Shapes moved in the distance, tall, slow, elegant, neither threat nor welcome, just presence. Olivia understood. This was where the others had come, the marked ones, those who had walked the gate before her. This was not a reward, nor was it punishment. It was continuation. She was not meant to return, and yet, as she stood in that dream-woven plain, she felt a tug, soft, insistent, pulling her backward. Not her body, her memory. She saw Fern Glen again, the chapel ruins, Eleanor's eyes, the 12 stones, the silent crowd, a girl's laughter, a feather on a pillow, the whisper of the bell. Her time here was done, but the town was not finished. She turned, expecting the doorway to be closed. It wasn't. It stood open, not behind her, but within her. She stepped back through. The town square was empty, the stones gone, the night quiet. No one remained. Time had shifted. Days, weeks, centuries? She didn't know. But she was still Olivia, and the mark still glowed. Eleanor found her the next morning, sitting on the chapel steps. She hadn't aged a day. Eleanor had. Wrinkles now lined her face. Her hair had silvered, but her eyes were the same. "You came back," she whispered. Olivia nodded. The story wasn't finished. Together they rebuilt, not buildings, not roads, but memory, story, connection. The town listened again, and the strange became sacred. Years passed. Olivia grew old, but not tired. She walked the woods, she read to children. She taught others to listen. And when her time came, she did not fear it. She returned to the square. The stones rose once more. The bell appeared and tolled once, just once. Then silence and peace and sleep.